Do-do-do. All right. I like some volume 1. Nobody yet. Maybe I should raise this. Let's see if I raise that a little. And so forth. All right, let's see if we get any people to join. We got some live streaming going both on the tube. Welcome those of you on tube, and welcome those of you on TikTok. So I wanted to talk about Alcaraz and his coaching situation, and also about the strings that I'm going to be stringing this racket with, because I think it's pretty interesting. So cool to see a couple people on YouTube joining in. I'd like to schedule these lives, but that takes a lot of effort and work. So just going with the flow, and hopefully those of you that are on YouTube, if you have TikTok, follow me on TikTok for sure, because TikTok is app as well. Their lives do better because I can take guests on the lives. So actually I can start taking guests already. So as people swing by on TikTok, let me know, as I'm just getting started, because I can take guests and you can ask questions in real time, which is something that the tube doesn't allow you to do. So actually that's an incredible feature. So anyway, thanks for the thumbs up. So we got Truffle X going into, and I've actually played with it already. So we've got Truffle X right here, purple Truffle X. This is probably one of the most interesting, intriguing strings that have come out in a long time, and I'm very interested to. Actually, I played with them already in my wife's racket, so I actually have a good sense of how these are going to play, but I don't do string reviews in alternative rackets. I only do string reviews, as everyone knows, as you guys know on YouTube. I only at the same tension, which today that's going to change a little bit, because Toroline recommends stringing this at 55 pounds with a little bit of a pre-stretch. So I'm going to go on the cross strings with Truffle X at 55 pounds as it's recommended. So if you see, there's very strict instructions on stringing Truffle X, and they say this string, gently hand tie knots, and do not exceed over 40 pounds of force when tying off knots, and avoid overpulling to prevent damage. So this is a 130, which is my preference. I prefer to have a 130. So if you have questions, drop them into the comments. If someone can do a test comment, why can't I see comments on YouTube? Let's see, chat filter, top messages. If someone wants to just leave me any sort of comment on YouTube, I don't know why I can't see it. And those of you that are joining TikTok, welcome, welcome. So we're going to be doing Truffle X, and let's see. So Toroline Truffle X, it's meant to be just a cross string or a hybrid. It's a very soft poly. It has a lot of stretch to it. I've done one of these string jobs with Truffle X already. I've played with it in a Wilson Clash, but I didn't do a review on it because I want to make sure I do the full review with a full set of strings in this Head Gravity MPL that I normally do everything in. So that's why it's important. So we're going to do Truffle X in the crosses at 55 pounds, and I'm going to do my mains at my normal 50 or 52 pounds of tension in the mains. But I'm going to use Head Lynx Tour in the mains because it's my #1 rated string. I rated an A+. It's the only string that's ever gotten an A+. It's also a 6-sided string. So they normally, Toroline normally suggest to put this in with like O Toro or something else. But again, it doesn't really matter what you want to hybrid it with. hybrid it with your favorite string, of course. I would normally hybrid this probably with Super Smash, my favorite string being or my most common string being Super Smash, Kirschbaum. But because this Head Lynx Tour is more like Otoro and it's 6-sided, and I know how great it is, and it's a stiffer string, I want to combine it with a softer poly. Kirschbaum, of course, a little bit of a softer string to begin with. So if I go soft with Kirschbaum Orange and then I put the purple in with Truffle X, I'm not sure how it'll work out. I will do that at some point, but I'm going to start with Head Lynx Tour because both Orange, Kirschbaum Orange, I know incredibly well, and I also know Head Lynx Tour incredibly well. I think most of you will appreciate this Head Lynx Tour in the mains and then using Truffle X in the crosses. Probably the most intriguing string that I've seen in a long time because a lot of people can't play with polys because they are so stiff. Truffle X is supposed to be much, much softer, and it's clearly much more pliable. It's still got a lot of memory, like a poly does, always does. So it doesn't feel like a gut. It doesn't feel like a multi. I mean, it feels very much like a poly, but it is softer. So that's what I'm going to go with. Head Lynx Tour. Let me know in the comments if that's what you think it's a good combination versus doing Kirschbaum Orange in the mains and Truffle X in the crosses. So Haynes K1D, what are you doing? I think I'm going to string this up with Head Lynx Tour and Truffle in the crosses. And those of you on talk, welcome for joining. Both audiences are growing really nicely, so that's awesome. And then we'll get started. And we're also going to talk a lot about Alcaraz and all the with Alcaraz and his coaching situation. So first, I want to ask those of you that are here, where'd everybody go on tube? Oh, the tube just disappeared. It just had a bunch of people in here and then they disappeared. So if you have any questions about Truffle X or about Head Lynx Tour or about any string, let's start there before I get into the Alcaraz drama, because the Alcaraz drama, it's sad to see the drama unfolding about Alcaraz, but you know, that's professional tennis. It's strange that it's happening, but it's happening. So if you stick around, we'll be talking about that. You can let me know, ask questions in the comments as I get going. But Head Lynx Tour in the mains on this racket, and then Truffle X. Let me know in the comments how many people have actually even heard of Toroline Truffle X, which is the purple string. How many people have heard about it, and are you eager to understand how it, because that will be, I have 2 other reviews coming out that are already done, basically. Otoro Tour and Otoro Spin. So those are the 2 that will be published on the channel soon. And then we'll get to this one. So, you know, I've ratcheted up the string reviews. There's a lot of play testing going on with these reviews, which is getting back to, you know, sort of grassroots of what I normally do. And let's see how it goes. So Head Lynx Tour in the mains, Truffle X in the crosses. And then if anyone wants to join the discussion on TikTok, if you want to join the discussion, hit the request button. You're welcome to join and ask some questions or about what's happening with Alcaraz. So get into, doesn't seem like many people really care about Truffle X. Maybe you do. What's up? Hey, One Big Serve. Oh, I know that username. Good to see you here. And those of you on the other network, good to see you here as well. Don't see many comments coming in yet. That's all right. So let's talk about Alcaraz. So Alcaraz and Juan Carlos have split up, which is, you know, a huge surprise. When you talk about Sinner and Alcaraz, they have very stable teams. 1, because they can afford to. Number 2, they both have really good families and teams behind them that have made sure that they've surrounded themselves with the right people. So we know Juan Carlos is a great coach. We know that Sinner's coaches are also awesome, and they're very loyal. So it was very strange to see the loyalty both between player Alcaraz and Juan Carlos Ferreira uh, break apart. So very strange. On Truffle X seems interesting but expensive. Plus the need to pre-stretch. Yeah, I did a short pre-stretch on the Truffle X. It is expensive, but since you're only doing it in the cross strings, I don't mind it. It was $24 plus if you use the code, if you use one of the influencers codes, you can get it for what, 20% off? So yeah, it's expensive, but if it does actually what it's supposed to do and it's softer and people will be able to play with polys and have less arm sensitivity, then it's definitely worth it, right? So if it actually does what it's supposed to do, or what I think the intention for it to do, then it's pretty awesome. So we'll find out. I already know from my wife, and she's an amazing player, and she has arm sensitivity. Her arm gives her problems, and she's already played with Truffle X. So I'm not going to let people know what's going to happen, what she thought about it until I'm done reviewing the string for myself in my own racket, because then I think I'll have a better baseline and context. Because I'm more of a string nerd, she doesn't care as much. But if it helps her arms and it doesn't strain her arm as much as other polys, because she doesn't want to go to a multi, because multis suck. If you're a high level player, you want to be playing with polys. You don't want to be playing with multis. And she's a very high level player. It's a couple. She doesn't want to play with a multi. Do you pre-stretch on a crank machine? Have a crank, and I'm curious. No, so that's the only thing that's different. I have some people talking about in the comments like, how old is that machine? It's 35 years old, and some people say in the comments, well, you need to upgrade. I don't need to upgrade. Hell no, I don't need to upgrade. I've been doing this a long time, and I also been used electronic machines, and all nothing wrong with electronic machines. They're amazing, especially when it comes to pre-stretching. You do have an advantage with the automatic pre-stretching on an electronic machine, and I would say that's probably the biggest pro advantage with a electronic machine is that you can just do automatic pre-stretching. I did hand pre-stretching, so I just wrapped the string around the wall, did a 180 around, not a sharp corner, a very smooth corner, and I tied off both ends to a free floating clamp, and I just did a mild stretch. So I didn't, it's not supposed to be a heavy stretch, 5% stretch. So I didn't do a very aggressive stretch. I don't like pre-stretching at all because it makes the strings play dead, and I don't like that. So, but of course, caliber players who like to play with a dead feeling string, they might like pre-stretching. So I understand why you'd want an electronic machine, but for everything else, I'll take mechanical all day long, because a good mechanical crank machine that's calibrated well will just last forever. I mean, this is 35 years old. It's not any faster for me to string on an electronic machine, as a crank machine. Actually, I think I string faster on a crank machine, and the string job's not any better. It's all about consistency, and you can, as long as your machine is maintained well, the consistency that you can get on a crank machine, I won't go into the depth of it now, I actually think it's a little bit better than an electronic machine. But to each their own, right? To each their own. This machine is a stand-up. It's the right height for me. It's an amazing machine. It does accurate string jobs. I can take it somewhere if I need to because it's light enough. I don't have to find a plug in the wall, so I don't have to worry about finding an outlet. And moving an electronic machine is ridiculous. I mean, they're extremely heavy. They're not portable at all. So it makes no sense to do that. Actually, I didn't measure this, and I don't want too much strength. So you do the pre-stretch on a crank machine. You said I already answered that. Preach on mechanical. Trip Westbrook. Yeah, I'm getting some flack by some people talking about, oh, you're old school and it's just not as good. You can't do a good job on a crank machine. When people say that, they have no effing clue what they're talking about. They're just amateurs. They don't understand about the stringer and the consistency of the stringer, the person, and the machine. And if you have a great crank machine, I will preach all day long. Again, nothing wrong with electronic machines if you want to go that route. But if you want to pay 5 times the amount, whatever it is, like more than 5 times the amount, 12 feet, 15 feet, 16, 17, and a little. Okay. If you want to pay all that extra money, have an electronic machine, and have to worry about circuits and software or anything like that, no, thank you. Absolutely not. I will take the mechanical machine. So going back to Alcaraz and his coaching situation. So it was first reported, the first news that came out, so the Spanish media seemed to be all over this. So it's really, you can't, obviously he's the number one tennis player in the world, and the Spanish media is going crazy about trying to figure out what happened. So what first came out was the news that Alcaraz only gave Juan Carlos Ferrero 2 days to make a decision about renewal, and that it was for a much lower amount than it was previously. So he was going to take a pay cut and days. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what was reported. So I don't know if any of us know how true or accurate it is. And it was said that his father, meaning Alcaraz's father, was instrumental in putting together, giving him the time limit, the 2-day time limit, and asking for a pay decrease. Again, we don't know if that's true, so I'm not going to say it was. But in the beginning, it seemed like the news coming out was very much against Alcaraz. So it sounds like Ferrero's camp came out and said, we didn't like the deal. I wanted to stay on with Alcaraz, but I wasn't okay with a pay cut. And they only gave me 2 days. So it seemed like they wanted me out. And he said, he's been coaching him since he's 15 years old. So what's that, about 6-7 years now? He's been coaching Alcaraz. So it is unusual. So that was the news. So the news seemed to be against, and you can see the stretch right now. You can see I'm pulling this. This stretch is way more than a typical poly. It actually caught me off guard for a moment. Wait a minute, that didn't feel right. So the initial reports were unflattering to Alcaraz and his father. And it seemed strange. Like, why would you want to change up coaches? Everything's been going so well. They seemingly have a tremendous relationship. Seemingly, I don't think any of us know for sure how great the relationship was or was not, but it seemed like a great relationship. Now, just what we heard in the past 24 hours on Reddit and other places. Again, these could be rumors, but it looks like the Spanish media has been trying to get Alcaraz's side of the story or Alcaraz's father's side of the story. And there was a little bit more depth on this side of the story where it sounded like Juan Carlos Ferrero missed a bunch of matches last year and didn't attend all of Alcaraz's matches, while the rest of the team was mostly there. So it seems like Juan Carlos Ferrero has his own tennis academy, so he's a busy guy, and it seems like he didn't go to all the tournaments. And I don't know whose decision that was. I don't know if it was by mutual agreement or not. It would have to be mutual agreement. Carlos is getting paid a lot of money, but not going to all the tournaments. And that's not super unusual to not go to some tournaments. And Alcaraz's winning percentage is actually better without Juan Carlos Ferrero being there, but that doesn't mean much. That really doesn't mean that much. But anyway, so it seemed like, okay, he wasn't attending all the tournaments. So maybe they thought he's getting paid too much. No one knows, or at least I don't know how much he was getting paid, but he seemed to be busy with other things and not being there for his player at all times. Now, the other point was that I read, what's up, CB, MRI, see that name all the time, stringing up Truffle X. Head Lynx tour in the mains at 52. Well, obviously my only A+ rated string with Truffle X in the mains at 55, like it's recommended by Toroline. I've also played with these already. I've played with Truffle X already in my wife's racket in a clash, but I didn't play with the racket. I didn't play for hours and hours. I played for about an hour with Truffle X and her racket. But of course, I'm not going to do a review in a racket that's not my own. So I have some good ideas of what Truffle X is all about. Obviously, a very soft poly, but I need to do a full review in my racket. So, and I wanted to do it with a string versus two soft strings. I didn't want to do it with Kirschbaum Orange being relatively soft, and then a super stretchy. This stretches a lot more. You can see it right here. Actually, you probably can't see it. Let me turn the view a little bit. So you can see now when I pull this, normally a poly is going to move about 2 inches, but this is going to stretch. Look at how much stretch that is. So 4 inches of stretch in Truffle X. So I would say it stretches about double of what a normal poly would. So there's a lot of stretch on Truffle X compared to most every other poly. So it's clearly more elastic and softer than other ones. So it's going to be interesting. Again, in my own racket, it's going to be much more interesting than in a different racket. And this will be a review that's probably coming out in about 2 weeks, somewhere in that nature. I obviously need to break the strings, play with them for a long time. Okay. Oh, one big serve, professional level electric string, and I have paid off 25% of the stringer in the first month. Much more comfortable stringing with electric machine than my constant pull. You mean than your crank? You're much more comfortable stringing. I mean, did I read that right? So it's an electric than my constant pull. I think you meant crank machine, right? Because an electric machine is a constant pull. Obviously, all depends on your crank machine as well. This machine has been amazing for 35 years. So again, to each their own. If you like your electric machine, awesome. But what kind of machine did you have prior? Are you going from a crank that was on a tabletop crank versus an electric machine that's a stand-up? I mean, all that makes a difference on how comfortable you're going to be. But, you know, to each their own. I love crank machines because they're portable. They last forever. I never have to worry about really anything breaking. And if something does break, I can fix it myself. I don't have to really order parts. The only thing I've ever changed on this machine is the 6 and 9 and 10 and 2 holders. Nothing else has ever broken. Maybe one clamp. I think I've broken one clamp in 35 years. That's broken. That's it. So, but again, to each their own. Electric machines are great. If you want circuits and you want power, great. They don't do a better job. They might be more comfortable for some people to do. But again, that's all preference, right? All right, so going back to Alcaraz and his coach, the second part of Alcaraz's, what came out from Alcaraz's camp, that apparently Alcaraz no longer wants to train at Juan Carlos Ferrera's training facility. And I could see how this would bother Juan Carlos because he has his own tennis training. He has his own camp. So having Alcaraz train there is good for business, right? Absolutely. It's really good for business. You know, who knows? That may have been one of the main reasons why Juan Carlos Ferrera really likes traveling, doesn't mind traveling, is he gets Alcaraz to train at his facility. Apparently, Alcaraz wants to train closer to home, and I guess these two places are not just that close together. And they built a facility. Alcaraz has built his own facility at home. So when he has downtime and he's off, he would rather do his training at home. And that makes a lot of sense, right? So if he was training at Juan Carlos's facility and then not being able to spend more time with friends and family and being home, that makes a lot of sense. And if Juan Carlos was already missing a lot of tournaments and now Alcaraz wanted to train at home, I could see that causing a little bit of a friction. You know, it's interesting when you pull these strings through, if you're really not careful, I can see it's not a coating. Oh, maybe that was just the lighting. Okay, no, that was fine. You know, sometimes if you pull a string too fast, you can feel it burn off, even though it's not a coating. You can feel the slickness go away if you're not careful. If you pull too fast, you get a burning sensation, and then there's a lot more friction on the strings. They don't slide as easy, and I thought that was just happening, but it wasn't. All right, great. Just wanted an upgrade. Oh, okay. Agree. Your crank was great. You just wanted an upgrade. I get that. I get that. I almost put an electronic tensioning head on this one a year or two ago, the Wise tensioning head, and I almost bought a used Biordo from my club just last year. They had a used Biordo I could have bought, and then when I just came down to it, I was like, yeah, it'd be kind of nice, but it'd be a big machine, heavy, in the home, and I just decided, why? After 35 years, the crank machine is still going amazing. It's very accurate, and why bother? So yeah, I thought about doing the upgrade. That makes sense, but I didn't. At the end of the day, the grass is not always greener, right? It can be if if you want to geek out on it and you want the newest, latest, greatest. Listen, I get it. Sometimes I'm like that as well, but not when it comes to stringing machines. I really didn't care that much. So anyway, stringing up, interesting string for sure. Have you tried it yet, CB? Have you tried Truffle X yet? I'm most curious, not for myself. I would be surprised if I would want to use it because I do like softer polys at times, but I don't know if I'd ever want something perceivedly this soft. I want some crispiness, right? I want some stiffness in my polys. I want some really firm snap, and that usually comes from a stiffer string. So I don't think that I'm going to be the major market for this because I don't have any arm issues. The only time I had ever had arm issues was the Gravity Pro. When I used the Gravity Pro, which was the best feeling racket I've ever played with, but I got severe tennis elbow. The only time I've ever gotten tennis elbow from tennis was from the Gravity Pro, which is really surprising, knowing that it's a forgiving racket, it's flexible, but it's heavy, right? It's heavy, and over, when you're playing 2 hours each session, that your arm can take some wear. So that's the only time I ever got tennis elbow from the Gravity Pro. And I don't even know why I got in that topic, but no, don't plan on trying it. So you don't plan on trying it. Yeah. Yeah. So again, I don't think it's going to be for me personally, but if it can replace, we usually string, most people in town that have arm sensitivity, we either use Head Velocity MLT or NXT from Wilson. Usually MLT more often than NXT, unless it's a request. So people who have arm sensitivity that can't use full beds of polys, I think going with a poly, if there is a poly hybrid that would work for people, it might be this. So for those people that are pretty decent players that may not want multi, but they have to use multi, and they'd rather use a full bed of poly but can't, then maybe the string will be that bridge. Man, the string really stretches a long way. Interesting. Very, very interesting. So maybe it'll be a replacement for Head MLT, or people who might want to that still have arm sensitivity and have to use full beds of polys. Maybe they can do a half bed of Truffle X here, and then they can do a half bed of MLT or NXT or whatever it might be. Again, so we're just trying it. I think most people are going to be pretty interesting on how it plays. I watched the Tennis Spin review of it. Those guys don't seem to be, there's one really good player that of course plays that said he loved it. So I give him some more credence than Harry himself on what Harry says. I don't know if, and I don't think they play with the strings long enough to ever really know what's the longevity, what's the tension maintenance. So I don't trust those really quick flippant reviews that just say how great every string is. We all know that the nuance in the strings is really what matters. So anyway, so thanks everybody for joining on the talk. If anyone wants to join and have a discussion, thanks for the likes. Cool to see some people here. Awesome that the audiences are growing on talk and on IG and on YT. It's really nice to see the audience is growing everywhere. So that's why I'm multi-streaming to 2 places right now, plus recording as well. So let's see. Appreciate your lack of hype in your reviews. Oh, thanks, Trip. I appreciate it as well. Yeah, the hype thing, I think I'm just a little too if you want to call it old or mature for the hype train, right? Listen, I get giddy about a good set of string like Head Lynx Tour. Like, it's awesome when I find a great string like Head Lynx Tour or Torna S7 or, Super Smash, or I like Toroline Toro. But is it dramatically different? No. I mean, come on, they're polys. They're all great. The power is not much different. The spin potential is not nearly what everyone talks about. It's a tiny fraction. When it comes to power and spin, it's all about the racket and it's all about the string pattern. As long as you have a poly, if you have a good quality poly, you're not seeing much difference in power and spin. And people, I know we all have biases and people think, oh, that one has so much more power. It's just not true. I play back-to-back consistently with dozens of strings each year. And let me see if I made a mistake on this. Did I make a mistake? No. Okay, I haven't set it the right tension. I thought you all were distracting me and I may have had the wrong tension set. That's where an E machine would be nice, is I'd see the number. So I have to actually look at the number on the crank machine on the dial, versus if I saw a big digital LED display, then of course that's another advantage. That's an advantage of an E machine, is that you're less likely to make a tension. But I never make a mistake on tension unless I'm talking to you all at the same time. Potentially, that could be a potential distraction. But generally, it is an advantage. But I don't think that many people do these things. Okay, so let's see. Any other questions? Appreciate your lack of hype. Thanks very much. If anyone has any questions. So what do you guys think about Alcaraz and Juan Carlos Ferrero's breakup? So I'm going to go to that again. So obviously, Juan Carlos Ferrero leaving the team for Alcaraz is interesting. And it's hard to say. Normally, I would say this is not a good idea. This is really more likely to end badly for Alcaraz than be any sort of positive. But when it comes to Alcaraz, his rest of his team is staying intact. Both he and Sinner have a great team around him with other people and family members. So, and Alcaraz, of course, and Sinner are just so relatively mentally so far ahead of the field. Most of the time I would think this could only be bad. And I still think it could only be bad. I don't think it could be good. But I don't think it's going to be bad. Again, I don't know. I could be wrong about that. But I think just Sinner and Alcaraz are too good to let one coaching change really affect their course of their careers. Could it? Absolutely. But I think the bigger thing is, I'm not that worried for Carlos. Yeah, me neither. I think the bigger thing here is, if Alcaraz's father was the main reason for this breakup between the coach and his son, if he was highly instrumental, then I think this could be bad. I don't know. There's been some reporting that Carlos's father was very involved with this. I don't know if that's true. If maybe he was just using his father as sort of his agent, so to speak, to make the relationship breakup a little easier. But if the father was instrumental in persuading Carlos to make this happen, and it was primarily based on money, then I think it's a problem. If it's Carlos growing up to be an adult and taking control of his life and with good guidance, but he was the one that said, I'm okay with having the rest of the team. Let's have the rest of the team stay on. Let's let Juan run his camp. He doesn't have to come to the tournaments and he won't coach me anymore. So if it's primarily Carlos's decision, I don't think there's much risk, unless Carlos has really gotten into just wanting to party more and wanting a lot more free time and doesn't want to train as hard, which I don't think is the case. I doubt that's the case. But if his father was too heavily involved and persuaded Carlos to do it, then I don't think that's more likely to be more negative than positive. But again, because both Carlos and Alcaraz are so much ahead of everybody else, I don't think there's much concern here. But it is strange, right? And especially because it's a messy breakup, which is interesting to see how messy the breakup is. Normally, when it's people of high character and class and integrity, like Sinner and like Alcaraz, you expect these breakups to be a little less public. But this one is really public. Maybe that's because the Spanish media is just going to town on this story. Maybe there's just more noise than there should be, but it's unusual. So there we go. We are done with Truffle X. Let's test the snapback on the mains, see if we notice anything. Truffle X and Head Lynx Tour. So pretty good group here. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. He'll get the party fever out of his system in a few years. Yeah, I think so. You know, there is some. He's right at that age. I don't know. Does he have a steady girlfriend right now? Is he changing girlfriends often? That could be a distraction for sure. But again, I think they're just so dialed in, especially Sinner. Sinner likes a simple life. He doesn't need the party life. It's just his personality. He doesn't get caught up in party life. Yes, he likes to enjoy himself. Yes, he dates some very pretty women and so forth, but he just seems to be more of a homebody. He doesn't seem to like, you know, he's someone who just likes hanging out with close friends. There's no doubt about it. And Alcaraz as well, but Alcaraz does seem to like want to have more fun on a general basis. Then Sinner's fun is a little bit more calm. All right, so snapback. We're looking, of course, snapback on the Head Lynx Tour, which is always really strong. You know, so that snaps back. It's fresh, it's new, so it's always going to snap back on a poly really well. These stay out of place. So the crosses, you can see that I can move them, and I'll try and angle that. The crosses don't snap back all the way, but that's also more typical that the crosses may not snap back as much. And it's not as important that the crosses snap back as well because most of the spin is coming from the main strings when they deflect and then snap back into place. On most shots, that's coming from the main strings, not from the crosses. So I don't know how you know, people get all hyped up about snapback, and it is. Snapback's really, really important. But when it's a poly, if it doesn't snap back exactly all the way, it doesn't seem to make a huge difference in playability. It's nothing like the old synthetic guts and gut. When gut and synthetic gut are out of place, they really affect the ball accuracy. But when polys are a little bit out of shape, each time you strike, they still snap back during the ball's exit from the string bed. So I don't really put too much credence on that. Of course, having great snapback can never be a negative. Doesn't seem like it anyway. But sometimes if it doesn't, like these definitely don't snap back that great on the crosses. But there we go. Looks okay. Purple in the Gravity MPL. Looks pretty good. All right. So I'll be starting playing them with that tomorrow. Let's see. He'll get party fever out of his system. Looks okay for this kind of string. Yeah. A more flexible string, you'd expect it not to snap back as much as obviously a much stiffer string is going to have a tendency to want to snap back and return. I think it's going to play interesting. Again, I don't think it's for me, but I could be wrong. You know, that stronger player on tennis spin, he says he loved it. It may be his new go-to string, but I don't know what to believe when some of these reviewers, will they actually continue to use them? They don't ever do an update on that. And so you really don't know. They just hit it with it for 15, 30 minutes and then call it a day. That's what it seems like most of them do. And you can't tell the quality of a string. So many strings. The vast majority of strings play amazing for the first half hour or an hour, and there's very little difference. Where you see the quality in a string differ is after an hour, after 2 hours, after 3 hours, after 4 hours. The playability of a string after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours is where you really figure out what's a great string. Because unless you're stringing like I am more often, or you have a home stringer, you're not going to string every hour. So who wants to use? I can't believe as many people use Polytour Pro as they do. This Polytour Pro, man, it's like 1 hour at best when I'm hitting, and then it just becomes a spaghetti. It's so bad. I can't believe, other than the touch, like the feel around the net and drop shots is like almost next level. It's like almost unpoly like Polytour Pro I'm talking about. But when it comes to ground strokes and anything with force after an hour, like I'm screaming to get those strings out of my racket. So I can't stand Polytour Pro in terms of longevity. It's really, really bad. Yeah, so I don't, that's a good question, CB. I'm guessing that you're going to compare it to a full Battle of Lynx tour. Yeah, I guess so, right? Because there's obviously I know Lynx tour really well. So how does it change based on being a hybrid? Toroline suggests to use Otoro or one of their strings, but I think Lynx Tour is better than all of them by this much, right? So it's my favorite string. It's the string that I know better than any Otoro string. So, and I know a lot of people seem to really like Head Lynx Tour as well. So I think the review is more compelling to do with Head Lynx Tour and Truffle X, because you're going to see other people do the reviews with Otoro and with Truffle X. So you're going to see plenty of those reviews. So I'm not, I like to go against the grain a little bit, and I'd rather use my number one, what I think is one of the best performing strings, Head Lynx Tour, with Truffle X. So I'll be able to tell the difference. As a rec player, what do you use a poly versus? What do I get using a poly versus just playing with a quality multi? So if you hit with good spin, even as a rec player, intermediate rec player, if you strike the ball with good revolutions, whether your accuracy and your level play is great or not, doesn't really matter too much. But if you're hitting with spin consistently, like you're striking the ball, you're impacting the ball, you're winning the collision, and the ball is able to compress into the string bed, and you get, whether it's underspin or topspin on a regular basis, and you're swinging with authority, again, no matter your level, if you're swinging with authority and you're getting ball compression and you're getting enough impact, a poly is going to give you much more consistent spin than a multi. If you are compact swing and you're more bunting the ball around, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but if you're just not getting the impact of the ball to really compress into the strings, you're going to get more pop out of a multi, and you'll probably enjoy the feel and the power potential on a multi-string versus a poly. But if you're good enough where you're really striking the ball hard and you still want it to land in the court or have a better chance of it landing in the court, a polyester string, because of the snapback, is unbeatable. That doesn't mean for everybody it's unbeatable. Again, if you have a deliberate or compact swing and you don't compress the ball heavily into your string bed every shot, then a poly is not going to do that much for you. And you're going to probably feel more comfortable with a multi, because a multi will just give you a little bit more natural power. You're not worried about it hitting it out too far, or that loss of control that you can get with a multi only comes into play when you get that deep ball compression. You've heard, when you're hearing a high level player striking the ball and you get that thump. When you get that thump, that's where anyone who's thumping the ball regularly and getting a nice crisp shot, even if you're a 3-5 player or a 3-0 level player, if you occasionally getting a really crisp shot, the poly is going to be more control, without a doubt. If you're not getting the thump ever, or not on a regular basis, then it probably doesn't matter. Then a multi is going to be better for your arm. It's going to have better power response. It's going to have better feel for you. So multis have their place, but they don't have a place at the high level. So if you're a high caliber player, or not high level, let's say if you're an advanced player, 4.0, 4.5, somewhere in that range, depending on your strokes, polys are almost a must. So if you have decent control over your shots and you're striking the ball with authority, polys are mandatory, outside of you having arm issues. Otherwise, it doesn't make that big of a difference. So that's my thought of it as a rec player. Hopefully that answered your question. Hi, may I get your recommended best hybrid combination for spin and control? I'm an intermediate player. Um, you're talking about hybrid as I use the word blend when I'm doing two polys together, like this. When you do a poly blend, then are you talking about a blend or are you talking about a hybrid when you want a poly and another string, either a multi or a gut? Let me know, Brasa. Are you when you say hybrid, two polys or a poly and a multi? I think can't answer that question until I know that. Two polys. So two polys. So a poly blend. Um, you're an intermediate player. Listen, if you're an intermediate player, you always want to go with a softer poly most of the time. There's no reason to get a really stiff poly because you're not going to break through the crust on a stiff poly. So I would go Kirschbaum orange is always a go-to for me. Don't worry about spin. All polys have plenty of spin and plenty of control, or all high quality polys have plenty of spin and control. So I wouldn't worry about spin because your spin comes from your racket. Oop, watch out. Spin comes from your racket, your string pattern, and your stroke. Don't worry about trying to generate spin from a string. A string has almost no impact, whether it's a four-sided string or it's a round string. The difference, like if you can spin the ball, let's say 1,000 RPMs revolution when you're striking the ball. If you're using a spin string, what are you going to get? 10 extra RPM, 1,000, then you might get 10 extra RPM. It has no practical impact on the ball whatsoever. It's not enough of a percentage to move the needle whatsoever. So don't talk about spin. I would talk about control and comfort, longevity, tension maintenance. Like those things are much more important. So I wouldn't worry about spin on when it comes to polys. They're all, any high quality poly has great snapback and is going to give you the spin that you want. Have you tried hybrid setup of Otoro and restring sync? What did I use with sync? I used two different strings with sync. One of them was a Toroline string. No, it wasn't Otoro. I forget what it was. It wasn't Otoro, but it was restring sync. I used restring sync with two different sets, four different rackets as a hybrid and as a full bed. I'm not a fan of restring sync. I know a lot of people are. It frays on me all the time, so it starts to fray. It breaks in between 4 and 5 hours. Its tension maintenance leaves a lot to be desired. So I didn't like sync. I know a lot of people claim it plays like Alu Power, and a lot of people love it, so that's fine if that's your subjective opinion. I'm just not a super big fan of sync. So I can't really answer that question. I've tried sync a lot. Because everyone talked about how much they liked it, but that didn't work out that didn't materialize for me personally. Longevity just was terrible on sync. Tension maintenance was actually solid until it broke. But again, so it's hard for me to answer because if you don't break strings, sync, and you don't fray the strings, then maybe you love sync, and I get that, but I can't attest to that because I've never gotten that far down the road with sync to really be able to convey that. Gut, have you ever tried a gut main poly cross hybrid? No, gut, yes, I have, but I actually haven't strung. I've strung gut mains poly cross hybrid, but I haven't played with them. Whenever I've played with the gut, it's always been a full set of gut and as a full bed or just in the crosses. I know that some people do play with is it Joker? He plays with mains in as guts, and I don't quite understand it, but I can't relate to it because I haven't actually tried it myself. So what do you think about it? Have you tried it? What have you found? Thanks for the answer. Is it a heavy ball more a result of a lot of spin or more power? Are there good strings for hitting heavy balls? The bottom part of that question, Zarv, is there's no combination of strings that are going to make you have a heavier ball. If you use a multi, you're going to get a little more power, so that might make it a little heavier. It's a combination of just the right amount of not just pace and spin, but also depth, right? A heavy ball, what we perceive as heavy balls, is a ball where your mind doesn't really catch up to the ball, where it's going to land. And when it bounces deep into the court, but yet has enough spin to get it up above the shoulders or up higher in the range, and still has the pace where you can't position yourself properly for it, so you're kind of backed up or not great, and it gets on you really fast. So a heavy ball is a combination of depth, ball speed, spin, and height. That's what humans perceive as a heavy ball. And no string can do that, right? So your trajectory and your spin with its depth will make someone get the feeling or sensation of a heavy ball. Now, to get those 4 variables, I call it PTSD: pace, trajectory, spin, depth. When you can get PTSD on any particular shot, you give your opponent PTSD because it's a heavy ball. So if you have all 4 of those things, where the pace, let's say it's 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, whatever it might be, with the right trajectory over the net and with the right amount of spin, and it's deep or just the right depth where it gets up on a person. So when you're able to hit a shot with PTSD, that's what makes a heavy ball. And if you miss one of those things, and you know it when you hit the ball just at the right way, where you know it's going to be trouble for your opponent, you probably have all 4 of those factors: pace, the right trajectory, spin, and the right depth. Um, it's hard, it's impossible to produce that on every shot. You can try and practice it, obviously, to get the right amount of spin and pace and trajectory and depth. It's certainly worth practicing, but the strings, if you're using a good quality poly, it's going to be about your racket can help you a little bit, right? Your racket's going to give you some more power. Your stroke mechanics and your swing trajectory, that's all going to be the impact on a heavy ball. Too many people make way too much emphasis on strings and what they can and can't do. Strings can give you a tremendous amount of control because they're the things that impact the ball. But when it comes to all the little variables like power and spin, it's so over talked about, and you're much more better off focusing on your game or focusing on getting a thicker beam racket to get more power, or a stiffer racket, or any of the power rackets, versus trying to get those things out of the last thing. Even though it's the only thing that touches the ball, it's the least impactful change that you can make outside of, moving from multis to polys. Once you have a good quality poly and you're hitting the ball, don't get caught up in the power and spin myth when it comes to strings. Hope that makes sense. I bought a Babolat hybrid set with gut RPM blast for a good price. I was wondering if you played with this kind of hybrid. Babolat hybrid set with gut RPM blast. If I did, it was a long time ago, so I don't think so. I don't think I've played with gut and RPM blast, but gut feels amazing. I understand why people would like gut. I don't like the loss of accuracy. I hit like WTA right now. What does that mean, Quanting? Are you making fun of, are you throwing shade at the WTA tour right now? It sounds like you might be, or maybe I'm just reading into that because I kind of do as well. Right now, the WTA tour is just a snooze fest for me. I know that's not popular, but I just don't get it. What would be your string recommendation for Head Speed MP? I don't ever worry often about trying to match strings and rackets. I know a lot of people do. I think I always, if I take Kirschbaum Super Smash and put it in any racket that I play with frequently, that I'm comfortable with, it always plays great in all those rackets. Now, it doesn't last very well on every racket, or its tension maintenance is always a little suspect. So, but if I put it, I know exactly what I'm going to get out of the string no matter what racket. So I don't have a recommendation for the head speed. I would say just, Torna S7, Torna Big Hitter, Toroline Toro, Head Lynx Tor if you'd like a stiffer string. If you want a softer poly, then Kirschbaum Super Smash or Torna Big Hitter. Any of those. I'm probably missed a bunch as well, but that's my thoughts on that. Any insight on head speed 2024s? I'm having confusion. I'm picking my strings for the 18 by 20s. No, I've been, the new ones that are came out, right? The head, I don't get too deep into rackets. I'm sort of nerd out a little bit more on strings and less on rackets. I'm about to stop using Dunlop Black Widow to Luxilon Element 125 Clash. Yeah, I like the Clash. Talk about the racket here. My wife has the Clash. Clash, the new Clash, the 2024 Clash, whatever it is, the mostly black one with the red text. Great racket. Really good. I mean, the best Clash Wilson's ever made. It might be the best Wilson racket made right now. The RF, not a fan. The Blade, not a fan. The Clash is a really nice racket, so good choice. Oh, that's the Clash V2. What's the current Clash? V3? I think that's the current one's the V3, right? My go-to right now is Pure Rush 123 mains and Kirschbaum Max Power. Good solid choice, you know, very good blue collar. Pure Rush, I like Pure Rush a lot. I didn't like Kirschbaum Max Power as much. It's a good blue collar string, but nothing, no personality to that string. Not to say it was bad. I like Kirschbaum strings, but Max Power was, I actually like Kirschbaum. What's the other one? Orange, of course, I use all the time, but Kirschbaum, it's a yellow one that I did. I can't remember. And I like Pure Rush. Pure Rush is a good middle of the road, stiffness, soft poly. I really like Pure Rush. Now, WTA is fine. Women's bodies are different. I mean, WTA used their body to get pace, while ATP used their wrist stretch to get pace. Oh, I get it. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot. There's some say to that. Obviously, EGA hits more like with the big wrist snap, shorter swing, lots of quick whip, more like the guys, but most of the WA tour, yeah, it has that bigger swing. I do as well at times. If you watch my videos, when I'm playing poorly, I'm taking that racket comes back too far behind my body. I see it in the videos. It drives me nuts. It's not as bad as most of the women. But when I'm playing well, you'll see a very compact, very aggressive, not very compact. It'll just be a swing that is more hyper aggressive, that stays on the hitting side of my body. So I'm playing well, playing more like an ATP style play. But yeah, I get why it happens to me all the time that to get a smoother, bigger swing sometimes when I'm not as aggressive, then I feel like I'm hitting more like a WTA swing. Signum Pro Firestorm. I've tried two Signum strings. The green one that was sort of like the Hyper G copy. Maybe do this for a second. So the Hyper G, the green one that looked like Hyper G, I did that. It was okay. And then I used the one that Berrettini used to use. Is that Signum Pro Firestorm? No, that's not Firestorm. That's Signum Pro. It's Signum something else. The one that Berrettini used to use. Hated that string. One of the few polys that really, really disliked the string. Blown away how bad it was. But I don't think that was Pro Firestorm. How do you stop yourself from the WTA swing? I need to do that. Great question. I'm going to do a video on this when the weather gets warmer. Oh, it is Berrettini. So if that's Signum Pro Firestorm was Berrettini's, is it sort of not brown, but brownish copper, the copper color string. Yeah, sorry, I just did not like it at all. The accuracy was terrible. I didn't even feel like I was using a poly, and my son noticed it. I noticed it, and I was huge. I was like, oh, Signum Pro, I want to use something that's unusual. I want to use something that's, you know, usually used in Europe, not many Americans know about. I really liked the color, and I did not like it in a full bed. Signum Pro Firestorm, it was probably one of my most disliked polys. And again, I came into it with a bias of really wanting to like it. But I had a reel, and I used it 3 times, 3 sets of strings, and I ended up selling the partial reel because it was terrible. So yeah, I would say anyone who's string sensitive is going to know it. It's one of the worst polys I've used. The green one, Signum Pro, wasn't as good as Hyper G. It wasn't as bad as Pro Firestorm. My son was using the green one for a while, and I used it quite a bit as well. We had a reel of that as well, and it was significantly better, but it wasn't great. I would say it's like a C plus or a B, maybe a B. I'd give the green one the B, and I'd give Pro Firestorm. That was before I was doing my reviews. Pro Firestorm Copper, I'd give it a D for sure. Have you tried it? Are you using it? Is that what you're using? It's called less than $80 a reel. That's why I liked it. Yeah. So let me go back to the other question. And I know some questions on TikTok as well. Okay, quanting. Quanting, you said this. So no, women's bodies are different. You want to, how do you get out of yourself? How do you get faster swing? Wait longer. I think that's one of the keys. Don't get your swing going before the ball bounces. Generally around when the ball's bouncing on your side of the court. You should wait. Doesn't mean you shouldn't get your unit turn, but once you get your unit turn, think of like Fritz. Fritz is a good person to watch, even though I don't like his strokes. He's a good person to watch. Get your racket into your unit turn. Don't start your backswing early at all. Just get the unit turn done, and then be more aggressive. As you get older, I don't know how old you are, but if you're like me, if you're young, you get a natural fast swing, and you can wait longer. As we get older, our swings become a little bit more deliberate. Fight against that. Don't be deliberate. Don't try and be too smooth. Unless you have a really smooth game, and that's the kind of game you want. I want a little bit more of an abrupt, faster game. So wait for the ball to bounce on your side of the court, and then just be quicker back and quicker forward. That will naturally shorten or make that backswing, prevent it from going around the backside of your body. It will keep it on that side. So if you just go back and forward in one continuous motion, which is what all the ATP players do, except for like Etchenberry, do it that way. Be a little bit more aggressive and committed to each and every shot, and you'll find you'll be able to get that swing more like an ATP swing than a WTA swing. If you're doing, the old school, not old school, but if you are trying to be smooth and you're getting your racket back starting it too early, you'll just gravitate to a WTA swing because it wants to make a continuous swing. All of our swings need to be continuous, meaning after the unit turn, or even including the unit turn, the entire backswing and forward swing needs to be continuous. And if you have too much time or you start it early, it'll just end up falling away to the back behind your body, and then you'll come forward. So if you wait, which I know sounds counterproductive, if you wait for the ball to bounce and you focus on positioning yourself, and then once the ball bounces on your side of the court on most shots, then be explosive. Your swing will get shorter and be more ATP-like. And that's how all the ATP players do it. All right, I don't see any questions on TikTok, so I'll keep going on YouTube. My guy Connor, who played for Michigan, just played and tested Truffle X, Cross, and Otoro Tourmain, and said it was the softest setup he has played. He loved it. Yeah, I heard that on Tennis Spin as well. I used it in a clash last week for about an hour. I'm going to do the full review here with my own racket, not my wife's racket in the clash. I liked it. It felt good. I don't particularly love super soft strings, so I don't know how I'm going to like it after 4 or 5 hours. But you're talking about a high caliber player also liking it. So that's interesting. It's interesting. I wouldn't suspect a high caliber player to like a soft poly. That typically doesn't happen that often. Most really high caliber players want a stiffer string, something that's really responsive because they can break through the crust. They can get a stiff string to flex like other players can't. So really good players tend to like, more often than not, it's not universal, but more often than not, really strong players like to use stiffer strings. But Polytour Pro, on the other hand, is used by a lot of pros, and it's not one of the stiffer polys. So that's not everybody. So it's definitely not universal. The force go of the feel is the main difference between the two. Hyper G is plasticky and Lynx Tour is more crisp. Absolutely. To Alu Power, even more crisp than Alu Power. Alu Power is super crisp in that first hour, no doubt about it. Quanting, wait longer, great advice. I haven't heard that before. Yeah, it goes against what's, watch any ATP Pro in super slow motion, and you will see that don't include their unit turn, but just talk about the full backswing and full forward swing, that they don't take their backswing before the ball bounces. If the ball's bouncing really deep and coming at him really hard and it's bouncing on the baseline, then yes, it starts a little bit sooner. But it doesn't start when the ball is coming over the net. It's still longer. It's around the time just before the ball is bouncing, even when it bounces really deep into the court. But then their backswing is faster and shorter as well. So they adjust the length of their backswing in order to compensate for that. But it's still about waiting. You're just not waiting as much when it comes really deep and hard to the baseline. So that's where people will criticize the continuous swing, or when I tell people, don't prepare early, don't get caught up in preparing early. Get caught up in positioning yourself the best way you can, and once the ball is bouncing, be more explosive on your swing. So try it. I just had someone at the club do it. They watched a video that I did on that, and they started doing it. I can immediately see it. And they came up to me and like, oh my goodness, this changed everything. Because the other thing that early preparation does, it destroys positioning. If you prepare too early, you end up locking yourself in position. The human body doesn't like to move when its hands are far away from the body. So the further your hands move away from the center of gravity and from your body, especially the lower part of your body, around your waist, when your hands move away from your body, the feet stop. It's just natural. You can fight against it if you start it when you're 3 years old and you're preparing super early, like Serena was taught. You can learn to still move effectively with your racket and your hands far away from your body, but it is not good looking. It is not fluid. It is against all biomechanics to do it that way. So if you do enough practice and you start young enough, you can do it effectively. But if you want to move and flow to the ball, you don't want your hands far away from your body. If your hands get away from your body, I promise you, you are getting stuck in the mud and you will not move as efficiently. I love to watch Fritz for that reason. You can watch Sinner too and others. And again, I don't like Fritz's strokes, but it's easy to see what he's doing though. So when you look at him, his hands stay down low by his waist. He doesn't get them up really high, and he's very abrupt and very explosive. And his hands, and that's why I think that Fritz, he maximizes his movement. Like Fritz is just not a great mover by nature. Like he's not he's a really good athlete, but he moves, he's awkward, right? When he moves, but he gets everything out of his movement that he possibly can because his stroke mechanics allow him to do so. So he is an overachiever, in my opinion. He's an overachiever. He's getting every ounce out of his game, and his movement is part of it. He moves way better than he should for a big guy. And part of it, not all of it, is because his stroke mechanics allow him to continue moving efficiently, even though he's not the greatest mover. So that's my thoughts on that. So watch Fritz and you'll see what I'm talking about, especially if you watch him in slow motion. How do I get the wrist snap? I never had a racket flip. Maybe it was to do with taking it back too far. If you're worried about that kind of flip, I wouldn't worry about it. And that should be left to the younger generation, like the Sinners, if you're doing that wrist flip. If you're talking about laying the wrist back and getting the normal, why can't I think of the word, the wrist lag, then you're probably holding it on too tight, which is, depending on your level, the wrist lag is more natural if you're not too tight with your grip. So wrist lag is important. Wrist flip is not important unless you're like a young up-and-coming junior and you want to work on that Sinner style wrist flip. All right, CB, quanting to try and lead with the swing with the elbow and not the racket. That's also a really good tip. What CB is saying is you can lead with the hips. I like to lead with the hips to pull the lag. So lead with the hips. Some people like to do it with the shoulders. I like to get the hip turn, but other people like to drive the elbow as well. So that's a mental thing that works best. For me, when I think hips, it lets the wrist lag and it lets that elbow follow and then lead at the same time. But that's sort of just a mental perspective or trigger or checkpoint that it might be the hips for you. It could be your shoulders. It could be your elbow. A lot of people talking about the elbow as well. So CB's advice is something to think about as well. Again, you're just looking for the mental trigger that works for you. One trigger doesn't, the same trigger doesn't work for everybody. It's always different. You just have to find out which mental trigger works for you and which mental sequence, like mental triggers. So I can see it in videos. The videos have really helped me watch my game and see how it's degraded over time and where I need to pick it up. So I have like 5 or 6 different triggers that have worked for me. I've had like 20 or 30 of them written down, but some just don't work for me. And I work on these 5 mental triggers: wrist, being explosive, waiting on the ball to bounce, and so forth. And I have them in my notes on my iPhone. And I will look at them as often as I can before I go practice. And when I get those mental triggers set, it makes for a much better day of hitting. If I'm just let things go sort of in a natural state, things start to deteriorate, and I'll go into that WTA swing, and I'll start being too deliberate, and all these other things start to happen. So you just need to find the mental triggers that work for you, and then try and put them together like a connect the dots, like a puzzle. Connect the dots more like just do this, then that, then that. And if you keep doing those same things over and over because you know they work from you over a year, over 2 years, they start to become more natural. And if you think I'm crazy, like look at the things that Sinner and Alcaraz work on. Look at, they do these drills that look so amateurish at times, like mini tennis, variations of mini tennis. They do all these types of little skills that most recreational players would think that they're well beyond. They don't need to do those things anymore. So just take mini tennis, for example. The pros play a lot of mini tennis, and they do it with very much with a lot of conviction oftentimes. And recreational players don't do that. They don't have conviction onto trying, like working on these mental triggers. So it's really important that you're constantly working on the mental triggers because the pros do it all the time as well. You just think that they can always hit an incredible ball. No, the best pros are working on all the little fundamentals, and they're connecting the dots to all those fundamentals continuously, because like anyone else, over time you will start to pick up bad habits. Coco Golf is my prime example of that. I think Coco's amazing as a person, but her game and her forehand are so flawed that it drives me nuts because I know how good she can be and she should be the dominant player on the WTA tour, but she has so many bad habits that she needs to start breaking. And she can break them, but they're not easy. Like they won't happen in 2 months of off-season training. These are things that take years to break habits and reform new habits. And the worse the habit is, the harder it is, or the bigger flaw of that habit, the longer it takes. So these are not easy. So even as a rec player, you have to try and figure out what the triggers are. Watch, if you go to YouTube or onto TikTok, I have a series. I think I did 9 forehand tips, maybe 11. They're not all there yet. I'm still working on 5 or 6 more forehand tips to do, and those are like all the triggers. And you just have to figure out which ones work for you. Don't try, and hopefully there's not more than 5 of them. Hopefully you figure out 3, 4, or 5 that really work for you, and then you continuously work on those things for literally for years until you feel like you got them locked down. And then over time you'll lose it again. You'll have to reference it. So you do need to reference mental triggers. Really, really young kids don't do that. They don't need to. They have more natural biomechanics, and sometimes they still should, but lots of times kids won't do it. And they don't have the mental capacity yet to understand the nuances of stroke mechanics, of biomechanics, of continuous motion, things of that nature. So that's my thoughts there. Yeah, mental triggers, all about mental triggers. I've had to change a lot because, my capabilities now are much different than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So I've had to become much more cerebral to overcome the physical limitations. And not even physical limitations, I can actually reverse the physical limitations by focusing on the right things. So as you get older, for instance, you become more deliberate, smoother, and I don't want to do that. And if I just let that happen, that's what's going to happen. If I decide to be more aggressive and more committed and more, then I can reverse that and I can still hit, not quite as good when I used to hit, but on good days, I can still strike the ball really, really well, um, because I'm working on those mental triggers. But if I just let my body and my mind do what it wants to do, which is basically just be lazy. If my mind wants to be lazy, I could, we're humans. We're about saving energy. We're about doing things a little bit more deliberately and saving energy. When you're playing tennis, you're working out. You're not trying to save energy. You're trying to exert energy, and exert a lot of energy. That's what playing tennis or any sport is about. So your body and your mind want you to save energy. You have to do the opposite. Whether that's footwork and getting on your balls of your feet, or whether it's stroke mechanics and swinging faster and waiting longer and being a little bit more aggressive. Doesn't mean you have to be over aggressive. You have to find that right balance. But everyone will end up being just lazy or more deliberate, and you just have to fight against that. At least that's what I think. I think you have to fight against that all the time. Derek Gilles, 805, good stuff. Thank you very much. I hope that makes sense. I know I'm rambling a lot, but I know we're way off course as well. YT is emphasizing a relaxed wrist more than the racket flip. Yeah, a relaxed grip, absolutely. Who's YT, by the way? The racket flip, there's nothing wrong with that. I like to work on it sometimes, the racket flip, but it's not important. It does very little. It's like strings. It's the last part. It's the least important part. As long as you have a high quality set of strings, the racket's more important. Your strokes and mechanics are more important. When it comes to the wrist flip, it's an advanced maneuver. It would take years to master. It doesn't do that much. I hate the high elbow. I hate the racket facing forward and the elbow being high. Like, that's garbage. It's a scam. Any player you see, because there hasn't been one top player, number one or number two top player, that has the racket up high like this, elbow up like this. Much different from here than with a wrist flip versus here. So when you're here, like this new style you're seeing so many juniors do, like the Kyrgios style, Thomas Mahach, who I love as a player, but I can't stand that forehand. The more you get the elbow up and the racket facing forward, the longer the swing path and the more mistakes you're going to make. People think it looks cool. I see kids doing it all the time, but they can't keep four balls in play. It's just like a circus shot, just like Kyrgios. Kyrgios was never to be able to be consistent enough because his forehand stroke mechanics were garbage. Not garbage when the ball bounced where he wanted it to bounce, but you put him under pressure, just like TFO, the ball bounces deep and you can't get the racket flip around because your elbow is too high. It's such a scam. I'll tell you how I really think. But when you look at Roger and Novak and Nadal and Sinner and Carlos, yeah, they can get their racket facing forward a little bit, but their elbow is always below their hand. It is never like this. This is a huge difference of time. So, but they all generally have the more modern forehand where their elbows well below their hand. They may add in a flip, and that's okay, but they don't do this. There's a long way away, especially how it makes your shoulders have to manipulate as well. So I'm a huge dissenter of the high elbow racket facing forward. It's sort of the new way of tennis, and it is a mistake. And I can promise you it's a mistake because it's been around now for 10 or 15 years. And at the highest level of the sport, all the top pros that use that forehand all are more likely to make mistakes with it than the people who are using more conventional forehands. Even Sinner with the racket flip like this, it's more conventional, and I know it doesn't look like it to a lot of people, but slow it down. It's much more conventional. Alcaraz is as well. Alcaraz lowered his elbow a lot last year. Yeah, I can see at the high level that the wrist flip can help. The high elbow, never. It just will make you more inconsistent. It makes it look more sexy at times, or sexy, I don't think so, but it's more like a circus shot. So when you pull it off, it looks impressive and people are ooh and ah, but it's garbage because tennis is about control. Tennis is about consistency. It's not about the flashy shots. I know you want it to be, but Federer's forehand, which is always elbow down, was as flashy as it gets, and beautiful as it gets. And people ooh and ah just because how beautiful his forehand is, but it would not look that beautiful if his elbow got that high. So I will go spend, there's lots of advancements that happen in technique in tennis and other sports, but sometimes the advancements are a major step backwards. And that high forehand gull wing, I call it the gull wing forehand, is a regression, and it's going to make all those players. I think Thomas Mahac from Czechoslovakia, I love watching him play, and he does the forehand really quite well. And you look at his forehand, and people say it's amazing. It is at some level, but at the highest levels of the game, it's not the right way or the most effective way to win. So his movement is outstanding. I like to watch him just because his footwork and his movement is just next level when it comes to Mahac. His movement is just, and his backhand is so simple and so effective. His forehand he probably does the high elbow one in my mind that looks the nicest. But again, I still can't stand seeing it. Oh, YT equals YouTube. The channels seem to copy each other in themes, and themes seem to evolve over time. Yeah, I think, all the YouTubers borrow things when they see something. They're like, I can, maybe do a variation of that, especially if that video got a lot of views. You'll see a lot of people doing sort of the copycat videos. No doubt about it. Noel Boggs. So there's a couple people on TikTok that stuck around that seemed to like my blabbing, but a lot of people didn't stick around. I understand it as well. All right. Anyway, I think that's it for me. We got this racket strong. Thanks everybody for sticking around. If you haven't followed or subscribed, please do so. I'm doing a lot more videos. I continue to do, the string reviews are the foundation of my channel, even though I do some instructional stuff as well and some other things. The string reviews are the foundation, even though they're the least popular. They don't tend to do incredibly well because people don't care about strings that much to really watch all the string reviews. But I like doing them, and I like sharing my thoughts about string reviews. And I like doing the prediction videos as well. Australian Open's coming up. Let's see how Alcaraz does. Be interesting to see how he does. He's always struggled comparatively to Sinner at the Australian Open, at least the last few years. So does this coaching change help or hurt Alcaraz? I guess we're going to find out, right? I'm not going to make a prediction until I see what's the first week of the Australian Open. String reviews are the best. Thanks, KY, K1. Yeah, I like watching string reviews as well. I like doing the string reviews. I don't like doing racket reviews. Can't stand racket reviews. I enjoy playing tennis much too much to have my tennis affected by changing rackets all the time. That drives me nuts. So I just don't like to do those things. What are your thoughts on the Y-Tex quad twist? Don't know much about it, Derek. I think I've heard of it, but I haven't played with it, so I don't know. All right, CB, thanks for joining. One big serve. You've been here a long time too, and K1, I think you joined late, but nonetheless, appreciate everyone being here, and I'll see you whenever I see you next. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you. And by the way, if you're not on TikTok, join TikTok because I'd love to do guests and join requests on TikTok because we could have real discussions in real time on TikTok, something you cannot do on YouTube. So the TikTok and IG audiences have been growing really quickly, which is nice to see. But when it comes to direct communication with people, even though I haven't done it yet on TikTok with tennis, it's a really cool feature that they have. So you can join as a guest just with your audio. You don't have to be on video, or you can join with video and audio and have real-time discussions with people. So that might be something that I'd like to do in the future. So everyone have a good night. I'm going to go eat some dinner, and I'll see you in the next one. See you, everybody.